yeah, today we're going to be continue to look at the different tools and the frameworks that we have available that can help in bringing the being alive, right? So we spoke about how in moments that are, challenging at work, stressful at work, it can be difficult to remind ourselves what actually it means to get into that place of being, which then allows, the shifts in perspectives, etc. So having kind of some frameworks that we can immediately refer to and remind ourselves about are very helpful in those situations. And last time we spoke about vertical and horizontal development, which I think is really sort of the big overall picture. Today we want to go kind of deeper into the consciousness maturity framework, and to give people an idea, kind of an idea of what it looks like to grow into different stages of development, and what those different stages of development are, and how that relates to the vertical growth, the vertical development. The way I've always looked at it is that, it's a map for the journey that we're on as human beings. It gives us sort of a guideline, because essentially we all yearn to grow and to develop and to evolve. I think that is part of human nature. And when we talk about this maturity map or consciousness development map, it's a map showing us kind of what are these different stages of development that we go through. And sometimes we get stuck in a stage of development, and we kind of, go in circles. And then at one point something happens and we make this shift and we open up to this new, let's call it worldview, but maybe there's a better word for it. And that opens up this whole new field of exploration, of discovery. We start to see things differently. We start to look at problems through a different lens. We start to be able to have different kind of impact as a leader, in this situation. And then eventually this next plane opens up, right? So is that kind of what we're talking about, that there's this innate yearning within us as human beings to grow and to develop and to discover, and to evolve who we are to higher potential, right? To express more potential.
Definitely, Mark. Worldview is a good term used very often in leadership development training, because the world you see as it is now in the workplace and the external factors of the organization, that's the worldview. But if you are able to step into the next level of mental model, mindset, or maturity, consciousness, then the worldview becomes larger. You see more things. And a very good example always, two simple example. One is, imagine the slope of a hill or a mountain. The higher you climb into each, so if you're at the bottom, you only see the tree, the trunk, the leaves. And if you're in the middle of the hill, then you start to see many trees. In other words, you see the forest, and if you're higher and so on, you can see even beyond the forest. You see within the forest, you can see lakes, or you can see rivers, and so on. The other way of saying is like an aeroplane, right? As you take off at ground level, your perspective is at ground level. And you go up to 5,000 feet, you start to see coastlines and so on. When you go to 10,000 feet, you see the whole ocean, or the whole continent, if you like. So these are exactly the same, as you say. The yearning that the human person has is really to elevate, all right, to grow developmentally as an adult, to grow, and also later on to awaken to more and more a bigger worldview that includes humanity.
So shall we just maybe bring up this framework that we're talking about?
Yeah.
So maybe it's an idea to start from, because we usually start from the left, but because we've been talking about the higher states, maybe we can go from right to left, just to kind of pick up on where we were.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Back in about 10 years ago, a lot of research was done in this, and even modern day research will show that less than 1% of adults are in the bliss state. So you can see, we are short of really, really game-changing leaders. And a good way of looking at it from, modern and ancient tradition is to say these people are enlightened.
It sounds to me like this is a person who is, you spoke about the airplane, right? And the airplane, the higher it flies, the more it sees that everything is connected. It sounds like people who are in this bliss state are, somewhere quite high up in the sky, and they look and they see that we're all united, that they have this sort of unity understanding of the world, and how we're all interconnected as human beings, and that we're not separated, that there is, that separation is an illusion, and therefore the idea of judging one person as good or bad and all that, it doesn't even, it's like it doesn't even make sense anymore. Is it that type of place that they're at, like that really holding everything as we're in this together, we're we are one, and we are interconnected, and we are interdependent of each other, and therefore it only makes sense to treat everyone with the same amount of respect and love, and that separation is an illusion.
Yes, and so exactly right. When you're in the bliss stage, you see the interrelatedness, you see the timelessness, you see the boundarylessness, and so on. And in fact, you are very close to the ultimate source of creation. However you want to put it, in different cultures, they put it in different ways, but they all point towards the same highest stage.
Nice. I think that gives us a good feel, Peter, of this purple state. Shall we take a step to the left and explore the light blue awareness, purpose-based management?
Can we instead look at the beginning now that we've seen the end?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's look at the red.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the red is measures, if you like, the level of consciousness where you are operating from a mindset, a mental model, a level of consciousness of fear. What does that mean? All right. A good way to example many people use: if there is a fire, an emergency, you don't think, oh, there's a fire, what should I do? All right. You immediately fall back onto your fear base and goes back to your animal brain, they call it. All right. Fight or flight. And you move. So the point here is that you may be an adult, 20, 30, 40 years old. You still have memory, consciousness of that. Psychologically, if you have, depending on your upbringing and the environment, your family cultural environment, if you have no opportunity because of poverty or because of um, oppression, you actually never mature from that fear base. You're able to move to the next stage, but you have not solved, you have not outgrown, you still have that fear. And you can see how it will affect you as you learn more things and you become more, you have more knowledge, more competencies, but you're still very much hanging on to your fear-based consciousness more than other people who have actually less, more fortunate, let's put it that way, where they have good nurturing, good models, good role models, good support system, all right? And they have already kind of outgrown that. So there are people who have outgrown fear-based, there are people who have not yet outgrown that, but can do a lot of good things, but they always are driven. There's a lot of fear in them.
Yeah.
So a good place to go to is the emotional, right? So the physical base is what we call egocentric. It's all about me. I got to win before anything else. I got to survive, as you say, right? But then, no person operates on its own. You go to school, you have friends, you got bullies, you got good friends, you got protectors, and so on. And you begin to realize the relationship is very important. And you start to be attracted to people of the same level, likeness of you, you say like attracts like. So you start to join groups. If you like, talk and so on, you join the debating society. If you want to do good, most likely, I'm not so sure today, but you have the guides, the Girl Guides and the Scouts. All right. As you grow towards your teen years, you identify. I'm good. I see uh, uh, activists, and so I joined an activist club. Maybe it's the Green. Um, maybe it's even gangs. Right. You want to feel safe and within a group that thinks like you, and you know able to meet your needs, psychological, emotional, security needs. You feel
Yeah.
protected. And that's the emotional feel good. And in an office, all right, you see that there are many people who don't like change. They like to stay in the team, all right, because they're comfortable. And if a manager pulls a person and work into another team, it's a bit of a challenge for them. So, and also the other important thing about emotional arc is they find it very hard. It's the slogan is you're with us or you are out. It's separateness. And so, but then you have to deal with other teams as well, or other kinds of groups. So that's why we say you're walking on eggshell. The moment you step out of the emotional security, the safety from a growth point of view, all right, then you are not sure what to do. You're walking on eggshells. If your manager says to you, "Hey, I'm going to promote you," right, to this, maybe not a good example. The example I want to say here is if your manager asks you to step out of your regular team and go and help out another team, when you are in the other team environment, you're not very sure what to do because you're not sure whether they think like you do and so on. You find that maybe, all right, and often you'll find that they think differently from you. So what do? You realize very soon that you have to work this out. So you're either you tell the boss, look, I got a problem. I'm not so sure. You get trained, or if you are a person who is orientated towards your own personal development, you go and you find it a more knowledge of how to interact with people who doesn't think like me. They are, go to the internet. That is when you're starting to step into the yellow stage. You start to think, you start to work things out. And eventually you get very good and at solving problems. So anytime you see a complex a challenge, you try to rationalize it. I've done it before, so I do it that way. In other words, you are not open to other people's view. If someone comes to you with a solution, say one of your subordinates or one of your teammates come to you and make a suggestion, you ask, where's the evidence for it? All right, you want hard facts. Or you say to them, let's analyze this more. So it slows down the decision making, as it states in there. You need data, because then with data you can solve problems. Up to a certain level, you become promoted, maybe a supervisor, manager, or even a first level leader in the organization. You begin to realize that the world is more complex than that. And that's where you get into the blue. You move away from your center of gravity of using thinking and problem solving and scientific methods and database outcomes or evidence to get outcomes. You gravitate to a different center of gravity and you start to look at the inner motivation and the inner drive. We call this wisdom. You start to become wiser. Knowledge is one thing, but you are assimilating knowledge. You are internalizing knowledge, all right, so that it becomes a part of the way you see things, your worldview, your mental model, your mindset, or from that level of consciousness, you start to see that if I want my teammate to contribute more, help the person to contribute more, all right, then I would talk to him from a purpose-based or from a meaning-based conversation, not a doing, not a solving, all right? If we are solving problem, then in a workplace, a good leader would say, all right, this way you can solve it. But what if you want a better outcome? What is it that motivates you or motivates the customer that you want? Those questions lead to your teammate to think about, hang on, yes, I can solve the problem, but I can also get better solutions if I start to reason what the purpose, my purpose is, the company's purpose is, and the client's purpose is as well. Right? So if you have someone who is purpose-based as a manager or even as a colleague, right, they will help you to orientate more towards, keep reminding you, hey, you're very good at problem solving, but there's another way. and therefore they step into more wisdom way of doing things, of being who you are, increasing your own inner potential in order along the lines of purpose and meaning. And we talk about bliss, all right, then from the purpose and meaning, then you're shifting into higher level of wisdom, where it is more about being true to yourself and helping others to be true to themselves in their own uniqueness. And that's where the bliss comes in.
Masterclass, Peter. It really took me on a journey, and I'm sure that anyone listening to this will also have experienced an incredible journey through these 5 stages of maturity. Yeah, so much great stuff in here, Peter. Really amazing. I want to maybe just add one thing that was coming to me as I was listening to you, and that's going back to this example of the meetings. Meetings, right? Everyone relates to meetings and what it's like to be in a meeting. And what I'll try to do is to kind of paint a picture of what a meeting looks like in each one of these 5 stages, and what somebody can do to shift the experience of that meeting, using this framework. So let's say, you're in a meeting and the people are in this fear-based state, right? In the red. So what does that look like? It looks like, people are afraid to speak up, right? So there's very little input from the group. They're afraid because, they'll be reprimanded, or they're afraid to make mistakes, or whatever it is. And you're observing that, right? So let's say you're in a place where you're observing this, and you're feeling that this experience is not satisfying for you, right? So the experience of that meeting is unfulfilling for you, and you feel like there's a better way. So what could you do to start moving it into this emotional feel-good based management? Well, one of the things could be to say, to create a space that is psychologically safe, right? You spoke about safety. So maybe it's about recognizing that, there is a certain level of fear, and to deliberately take a step back and create conditions where people can relax a bit, and say, let's take away the stress, let's take away the fear, let's create some level of safety in this room, and let's open up and hear where people, where everyone's at, right? So what you're then doing is you're shifting the experience, and you're moving it into this emotional feel-good based state, right? So you are the catalyst for shifting an experience. The next one would be, you're sitting in a meeting and everyone is nodding their heads and basically conforming to to what everyone else is saying. So there's this group think dynamic that's going on, which I think is very typical in many cases, in many organizations, where you end up basically saying the same things because that's sort of the way we do things around here, and you don't kind of go beyond those norms, those ways of thinking and doing things. And let's say you're sitting there and you're like, hey, something doesn't feel right. My experience of this meeting is there's something missing here, right? So if you then use this framework and think, okay, so the next area is this rational mental based. So what can I do to shift this experience? Maybe I can bring in a piece of data, right? A piece of new data that I've, read about, or I've identified, or I've researched, that kind of counters the narrative this, this groupthink narrative. And you bring that into the conversation. You say, hey, this is all fine, what we're discussing here, but have we considered, this particular aspect of it? And maybe it's a data point from a customer, some research on the consumer or whatever it is. Bringing that in can again shift that dynamic and bring in a bit more of the rational based thinking in this feel good based environment, right? And so that experience of the situation is going to evolve, right? And you can be a catalyst for that. Same thing if you're sitting in a meeting and it's dominated by, over intellectualization, right? So everything is about data. There's no intuition, there's no emotion. It's, it's all about deliberate problem solving, no spontaneity. And, again, you're feeling there's something missing here. So you can then use this framework and say, okay, there is this purpose-based, right? That lies beyond what I'm experiencing here. How can I bring some of that in? And there, maybe it's about why are we doing this, or what is let's reconnect with the purpose of this project or this initiative. Let's go back to the customer, right? Or to the consumer. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? So you're infusing some more meaning and some more purpose and some more depth into the conversation, and the experience that people are going to have is going to start to move. So, these are just some kind of ways in which this framework can be applied very practically in situations where we're observing a certain dynamic that feels like it's not, it feels old, basically. It feels like it's not adding value anymore, and that there's something about that experience that is ready to shift. And by tapping into this framework and understanding what does that next stage of development look like, and how do I infuse some of that into what I'm experiencing now, can have quite a immediate impact on the dynamic of the conversation and on how people are experiencing that particular moment.